Hello there, everyone. It's Julie Hutchison from Think, Be, Do Leadership, and today is day 7 of our 30 days communication fest. 30 days of hints and tips on how to be a better communicator, how to have more impact and influence in business, even in life, wherever it may be. You can use these anywhere. So my business is called Think, Be, Do Leadership, because you can't do differently unless you think differently and behave differently. So we're talking about today, day 7 of the 30 days of communication, how not to be a mood hoover. And why not to be a mood hoover as well, I should say. So if you're listening to this live, please say hello and just put hashtag live in front of your comments. If you're listening to the replay, then please feel free to comment as well, because I will check, and just put hashtag replay in front of your comment. So what are we talking about? Well, I don't know about you, but if you've ever been with a group of friends or trusted colleagues or people that you spend a lot of time with, your family even, you tend to have the type of conversations that are only able to be had with people that you feel safe with and that you trust. And it's very easy for people who are in groups, say it's in the canteen, it's over your lunch, or when you get home from work or something like that, then you just have a habit of falling into patterns of communication or patterns of behavior that are, let's say, not very positive. So completely negative behavior without even meaning it. And I'll give you an example. When I was in the police, 16 years I was in the police, and one thing I noticed was that at almost every opportunity, when you get 2 or 3 or more police officers together, they'll reminisce about the good old days. They'll remember everything as if it was much better in those days and not now. And that's human nature. I totally get that. But the other thing is that quite often it would be like a habitual thing where people would come in and complain and moan and find something to moan about and something to pull apart and to be offended by sometimes, or even just to not be very happy about it, to complain a bit, and to be what I call a mood hoover, which is like bringing the sense of the whole group down, draining the mood out of them. Now the problem is that if you're in a group of people, it's really, really easy to join in this kind of conversation. If you join in with the conversation, then you're part of the group and you belong, and it means that you can vent in a safe space. It can be a bit of a habit, so we just kind of get into this way of doing, and it makes us kind of like, at the time, in the short term, feel better about being able to get off our chest how we really feel, that boss of ours we don't like, or Jeanette in the corner, we don't like her, or something's happened, how somebody's bitching about something, or anything like that. Have you been there? Have you been in that organization? Have you been in that team? Yeah, so it's really, really easy for people to do. And when you think about it, why do they do that? Well, it's a safe space for people to say how they're feeling in a minute and then let off a bit of steam, and just to get it out there. We think it's nice and a nice and safe place to be. But the problem is that when that becomes a habit for everybody, it becomes a way of being. Then we are in that, and it's a bit like they say, when you put a frog in boiling, why would you do this? I don't recommend this. Being vegan, I would never put a frog in the boiling water. But when you put it in cold water, as you heat it up, the frog doesn't jump out because it's getting used to it. It feels okay, and then eventually the frog is going to die. I don't even know who said that, but it's nasty. But what we mean is that you don't feel it getting worse and worse. You don't feel the energy getting worse. You don't feel like there's anything wrong with what's going on here, and you don't feel like there's anything wrong with what you're doing. So the problem with that is, if you don't feel it, it doesn't mean it's not happening. And the other day I was talking to one of my friends, actually, and I shan't name her, but she very wisely said, we have to be careful, because if we're not careful when we're on our chat, we all just use it as an opportunity to moan. And I said, you know what, you're absolutely right. We shouldn't do that, because actually then it's this habit, and it doesn't make it good for the long term. So in the short term, yeah, you feel like you've got it all off your chest, but in the long term, what you notice is that the impact of that and the The trigger that we're giving ourselves is how to moan, how to make things sound bad, how to not look at the positive, how to make it feel like there's things aren't going right, because we're all releasing this venting about that moaning. And the problem is the impact of everybody over a long period of time is negative. That's what we come for. We go, suck the energy out, but we're not noticing until we get long term. And so how do we make other people feel when we do that? Well, probably worse, certainly no better. We're probably not listening to other people and finding out what's really going on for people. But we're also not looking at it from, okay, we've got this problem, but how can we change it? And so for long term, what it's doing is draining the energy out of a relationship. It's draining the energy out of that team, out of that, out of the environment, to a point where when you walk into that environment, it feels negative because everything feels like a problem. Everything feels like something's not going to go right. And so this safety that you feel to vent and say how you really feel becomes something that's actually quite toxic, and isn't taking you anywhere out of it, isn't taking you anywhere positive. Now, so this could be something you do at home as well. So when you've had a bad day at the office, for example, and you've spent all your time with a big smile on your face trying to look like everything's okay, if you've ever been there, then you walk through the door and your wife or your husband or whoever is there, or the dog, and you take it out on them. You're like, oh, this is the environment where I can relax and I can vent and I can say how I feel and I have a terrible day, and moaning about all your colleagues or whatever you do. But again, it feels safe. It feels like a place to vent. And I'm not saying it's not, and we do need a place to vent. However, if that's everything, not everything, if that is what we do every single time or too often, then again, that becomes draining because the person that's hearing it doesn't want to hear it. Yeah. Or the person who's hearing it thinks, well, I've had a bad day too, so I'm going to tell you about my negative day. Ugh. Yeah. And then it just feels bad. And so I'm not saying don't be honest. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if we're thinking about this in terms of how am I showing up, what's the impact that I'm having, what's my, what my communication, be it the body language, the way I say it, or what I say, or even who to, what's the long-term impact of that? What's the short and long-term impact of that? Me. Now, everybody else, okay, they're probably doing the same thing, but we're not talking about them. We're talking about you because you're here wanting to listen about making better impact. And so if we think about it, if we allow that to happen and we're now thinking that actually, hold on a second, I don't want to be the mood hoover, I don't want to be the one who brings the energy down, then we have to start getting conscious about the impact that we're having when that happens. Now, mood hoovers, there's more than just the one to walk in and when we vent, but there's also the ones that just spend the whole time being negative anyway. But we're going to focus on being this mood hoover, or as a group of people being this mood hoover. And so if we are in this safe environment and we think it's okay to drag that energy down, then we're thinking about it from our perspective about what we need, and actually not thinking about what the team needs or the group needs or the individual that you're talking to needs. Because as we said, over time, that's just going to suck the energy out and make us all negative. So if we want to have a better impact and a more positive impact, and remember, if we have a positive impact, it means that the people around us are going to have a positive experience of us, not that we're just hoorah and rah-rah. No, we can be realistic, but if we're positive and those people have a positive experience of us, then when we want to communicate something, we want to get our point across, or we want to get our something done, or the way we want to have it done, then they're more likely to want to listen to us because their experience of us is positive. So this whole joining in with a negative, and it might not be you that started it, but this whole joining in with this negative mood hoover and let's all take everything down is something that you personally need to step back from and look in on it. As we've said before, look in and look at what's going on here. What is happening? Now, if you recognize that actually, our trigger is that we go into the tea room and all we do is moan, that'll be in the police. Quite happened a lot. If that's what happens and everybody feels triggered into doing that, then you can change that. You can say, I'm going to step away from that. I don't want that to happen. And maybe Claire, just the person. Hello, Claire. You'll remember some of this. So if you're the person who walks in and everybody's moaning, then you can change it. You can say, hey guys, and this is the bit that's important. You don't need to just say everybody stop moaning, because that's like parenting the group. Okay, so we don't want to parent a group like that. Claire says she does remember what I'm talking about. Claire and I were in the police together a million years ago, Claire, and it's really lovely to see you, because we have some very funny stories to tell. Maybe we should tell them sometimes on here. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, so it's your responsibility. So don't go in and parent people and say like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, because you're just as guilty as everybody else, more than likely. But if you recognize it and you think it needs to be changed, then change the dynamic, change the way in which we show up, because when you show up differently, then the people around you will respond to it differently. So maybe you just divert it to some other the other conversation. You start focusing on something positive, or you just you know, like with children, you're like, oh, look at that aeroplane over there. But anything to distract that the direction that you're going in, if it's a negative direction. Okay, so think about, how can I change the dynamic by my behavior? And it's super important, because the minute you start to do that, then the people in the room will notice. They will notice that you're not joining in. They will notice that you're doing something different, and they will either think, what's going on? They'll maybe talk to you about it, or they will start to follow you, because it means that you, as a communicator, the way in which you're communicating, this is not what we want to do. So you're going to take people in a different direction. Okay, so it means that you're seen more as the leader. You're seen more as somebody who is making a positive change to the group. So into communication terms, in the impact terms, a very, very positive impact for you, because people will see you and think, ah, that's a better way to go. Yeah, because sometimes it's really hard to get, if you're in you're in the swamp of all of that, it's hard to move out of that unless somebody else takes you out and helps you out. Yeah, and so you can be the person that removes that negative feeling about conversations, about triggered conversations, and about the ones where you just sort of have a habit of it being a negative thing. So like when you walk in the door, think about, what am I going to say that isn't, oh, I've had a terrible day and oh God, Bob's horrible, or anything like that. What can you say differently that will change the dynamic of that conversation? When you walk into the tea room, or wherever, or a meeting, what can you say differently? What can you do differently that's going to change the dynamic of that meeting? Habitually, what's going to change it? Okay, so thank you very much, Claire. Lovely to see you. Must catch up with you. And remember that you can't make people change their behavior. Don't try and parent them. But if you want to change it, then you change yours, you'll change the dynamic, and people will follow you, because you are more positive and more desirable to follow. Yeah, and people will sit where they are because they don't have anything else to follow. But if you're being something that's more interesting, and I don't, as I said, not rah-rah, but just more positive, in a way of like, interesting, let's see what she's going to be doing, or let's see what she's saying, that's more interesting to talk about, they will follow you. And then you can improve that situation. You can take yourself away from being that mood hoover. And if, and Claire will remember this person, you are like somebody who sits in the corner, folds their arms, and just says, oh, everything's rubbish, I don't want to play there, then stop. You remember Spud, Claire. So have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon. We will see you tomorrow for day 8 of 30 days of communication tips, and I will speak to you all soon. If you're watching this on replay, do let me know that you are there, and send me a message. If you want some help in introducing better communication in your business, then do let me know as well, because then we will come in and make sure that all of your team have an understanding of how to be mindful in their impact, how to communicate better, and have a better business because of it. Okay, thanks everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.